welcome. On behalf of the president, Hudson, Ken Weinstein, and our chair, Sarah Stern, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and I'd like to especially, of course, thank our authors and panelists for making this program possible. My job is to be brief. I will try to meet that. And secondly, my only task is to introduce Eric Metaxas, who's going to set up and chair the program today. For many of you, he doesn't need much introduction because he has done many important things that are known to you and to others that will be joining us via television. Perhaps some of you have already read his best-selling book, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, Spy, which was a New York Times bestseller, and an important book about an important man. In addition, Mr. Metaxas was keynote speaker at the 2012 National Prayer Breakfast here in Washington, D.C., and I believe there are copies of that presentation available outside. We're also grateful for him being a participant in this book, Persecuted, which we are releasing today and that this panel is about. He helped to write the foreword and has been an important contributor to the work of the authors of the book. And on behalf of Hudson and them, I want to thank him for that participation. He also, aside from much distinguished work, including the companion to the movie Amazing Grace, William Wilberforce, and the heroic campaign to end slavery, another important man and with important work that needed to be more widely known that he helped to make possible. Mr. Metaxas has a varied array of interests and, as I said to him earlier, a sense of humor, which for someone who does important work and appears in Washington is not all that common, as some of you here know. He has written for not only the New York Times and many other great publications, but also for Chuck Colson and Veggie Tales, which I personally contributed to in my capacity as a father. So really? I want to thank him for that as well. He also wrote a book entitled Don't You Believe It, a book-length parody of Ripley's Believe It or Not that led novelist Mark Halperin to dub him the true heir to the Far Side's Gary Larson. Now, I actually know people who would love to have that said about them so they could put that on their tombstone. So that may say more about my friends and colleagues at Hudson than it does about anything else. But I want to thank him for being here. His important work on the topics of faith, truth, justice, and freedom are well known to most people here, and we hope to benefit from his continued collaboration with our authors. So without any further ado, let me introduce Mr. Metaxas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. A lot of that actually is true, so thank you. Yes, it's because of my parody of the Ripley's Believe It or Not books that I was invited, obviously, to moderate this panel today. So I want to thank you for knowing the existence of that book. It's available for $400 on eBay, I think. There's one copy left. No, I hope I'm not here because of that, although I'm glad that someone's aware of it. I'm here probably for many reasons. Significant, I hope, is my concern for the issue of persecution of not only Christians, but of anyone for religious reasons around the world. This is something that obviously gets very little coverage, it seems to me. So when I was asked to write the foreword for this brand new book, Persecuted, by these three distinguished authors, I was profoundly honored and thrilled to do it. There's so much to talk about, and we will get to that. I've just got a brief 45-minute presentation, then we're going to get to the three of you any minute. I could probably do it in 42 if I talk fast, so you hang on to your hats. Thank you for laughing. That's not true. I will be extraordinarily brief. I only really want to say up front that I think that what drew me into the subject of persecution, Christian persecution, and religious freedom was writing my book on Bonhoeffer. This was not something about which I knew very much at all. I confess to having been ignorant, mostly ignorant about it, but I say that only because I know that I'm speaking to many people. There are many people watching at home and who will hear about this, who are ignorant about this. And I think that particularly the American church is tremendously ignorant about this. And as someone who proudly considered himself a non-card-carrying member of the American church, to have been ignorant about this for so long tells me that we aren't talking about this enough. And so it's a privilege for me to do my part, because I do think this is at the heart of so many issues, not least what is freedom in the world. It just touches on so much. It's like stem cells that you hardly know where to begin. One thing I saw from the Bonhoeffer book is that when religious freedom begins to be eclipsed, it leads inevitably to genuine persecution. And I do think that in America, suddenly, religious freedom is being very seriously threatened. No one seems to be talking about it. I just spoke about it at CPAC of all places, not the kind of place where people seem to be so interested in it. But I do think that this is vital. It's a vital issue to so many things, and again, not least because it leads to genuine persecution, which we are seeing around the world in such measure that we can hardly believe it. But again, most of us are ignorant of it. That's why I'm so excited about this book. This book, for anybody out there of, I would say, a kind of guttering faith, let me say, if you read this book, it will profoundly strengthen your faith. So be careful if you decide to read it, but it will strengthen what faith you have. If you have no faith, it may give you some. So let's leave it at that. I think that there's so many questions I want to ask the panel. In a little bit, we'll open things up for the audience. Our panel, I hope you know who's sitting here. You know Lela Gilbert, Paul Marshall, and Nina Shea. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But they have asked me, they prefer true or false questions. Is that right? Am I getting that right? And if you can't come up with a true or false question, then multiple choice at most. So thank you very much. And number 2, pencils. So anyway, I will ask the first question, then I'll sit down. I really mean to facilitate a conversation. This is not a Jeopardy thing. You know that. There are no buzzers, and there are no right or wrong answers. We really want to facilitate a conversation. So my first question before I sit down, and I will, is why did you write this book? Now, if that's not enough of a softball, I've got other softballs. But why did you write this book, and how can we get this wonderful product will be my follow-up question. But in all seriousness, for any of you, you don't all have to answer this, but that's the main question. I've got some thoughts on that, but we're interested in your thoughts. So anyone who wants to lead off, and we'll just have our conversation.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate your taking the time to be here and to really draw attention, public attention, to this important story. All of us, and I'll let my colleagues speak for themselves, have been working on this issue of documenting religious freedom violations and Christian persecution for many years, and we have actually other books dating from 16 years ago on the same subject. So we thought we would combine forces this time and really highlight the fact that religious persecution is one of the gravest human rights abuses of our day, and that Christians are the most persecuted, widely persecuted group in the world today. And that is not just our finding, it's also been reinforced by Pew Research Center, The Economist, Newsweek magazine, the Vatican, Compass Direct, and so on. So it is almost irrefutable at this point that Christians are the most widely persecuted religious group out of sheer numbers. They are located globally, while there are Tibetan Buddhists persecuted certainly in China, and there's Ahmadi Muslims persecuted in Pakistan. Christians are founded in both places and are persecuted in both places. So this is a story that's not very well known in America. It's not widely reported. And the churches themselves do not even really take notice sometimes. And we just thought that it was time, again, to retell this story. Some of you in this room have been working with us for many, many years on this issue. And we had a great deal of success 16 years ago when we got the work together